Good evening. Welcome to the Rutland Town School Board meeting on October 8th, 2024. If everyone could please rise and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up is the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Staff and student highlights today?
Not today.
May I ask what the hiccup is?
I think busy, and it's tough to come to evening events, so we ask that they come, and we ask teachers to sign up, but we can't get somebody for every month.
We can't require
Right.
staff. That's part of the problem.
Well,
So,
it is nice when we hear what's going on in the school. So I would hope
We
that.
continue to encourage
Yeah.
them to attend, and we said just make it brief. If you can't come in person, to pop online.
Another option would be to show a video, and they don't have to necessarily be in person, but we
Okay.
could just see a highlight of something.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that could be an alternative way
That's great.
that we can see what's going on.
Okay.
Like a GoPro in a kindergarten
Want to
classroom.
put a GoPro on me?
Yeah.
Feel free.
Right.
But maybe we'll get, a little bit more momentum that way.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Yep.
Okay. Teacher, staff, and community comments. So seeing no one here and no one raising their hand there online, we will move on. So PCB update. Do you have anything to report, Sarah?
Yes, we had testing hot off the press. I feel like the same as last time. We had air quality testing that happened a couple weeks ago, and Eben from the state spoke to Kelly late this morning and said it is good news. He's just waiting for the state to confirm the numbers that he received, the Department of Health, pardon me. And as soon as he gets the green light from the Department of Health, he will then share those in writing with us and with the community. So he said it usually takes 10 days, but he is pushing them, and we are really hoping that he can continue to push them because, as most of you know, our guidance counselor does not, she's using the SRO space, but can't have everybody in there. Library is still going in for preschool students, and really what's impacting us is we don't have that planning room, the planning for success room with Liz and Ashley. So kids that really need a quiet space, if the conference room is used, we're just trying to find a classroom, and sometimes they just need a quiet space, which we don't have right now. So we're really hoping. Otherwise, Mike and I talked about moving out of our rooms, giving them that space, but it's kind of small. So fingers crossed, everyone.
What about the window caulking replacement, that kind of thing? Is that
The what?
Like the replacement of the parts that we know have the PCBs? I thought I read somewhere that some window vendors or something they're working on or something.
We had a number of broken windows.
Okay, maybe that's what.
Those need to be replaced if they haven't been
And
already.
then the fixes will be maybe over the summer. They're not happening now. Is that correct?
No, they're
From
not.
what he
So
said.
we would wait for Eben. I want to say Craig, right?
Yeah,
Eben would be the one to let us know about next steps after this.
Okay. So basically, they did what had to be done, but we know there's more to do. Just we're okay right now, holding steady.
potentially there's more to do.
Potentially, there's more to do. Okay. Okay. To be continued. It sounds.
To
like.
be continued, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else before we move on?
No.
Okay. CLA update. So again, I have not heard back from the listers. I haven't been as persistent this time because I haven't had any success. However, I did speak to our liaison on the select board, and he did question them during a meeting about where they're at because they hadn't heard either. And they are not doing anything right now because the one vendor, at least from what I heard or read, the one vendor that they tried to get numbers from, they couldn't yet because he was too busy. And because they haven't been mandated to get a reappraisal done, they don't feel the need to continue pushing right now. So nothing's being done. So I don't know if there are multiple vendors available to question for quotes or what. But I think it's out of our direct purview. Does anyone have anything else to add?
Did we put, well, we're not there yet, but did we put the CLA on our little fact sheet, Chris? FAQs?
I believe we have it in there somewhere, but
Okay.
that is something we're not gonna just put on the FAQs, but we will send that out to the Rutland Town community, explain what CLA is, how it impacts budget. So that'll be something which we could maybe work with the communication committee on as well. So, yeah.
I know you spent some
Why
time.
don't you do a nice job of explaining that?
Yeah, I think we gotta get ahead of it this year, just to,
Yeah.
you know, we're gonna be at 75 or 74%, if not worse, so we just gotta get in front of it. Explain. And then there is a long process, there are many towns ahead of us, and I think, from my understanding too, that at least the two vendors aren't even quoting because they're too far out, they don't wanna give us a price.
And I think that that's what part of the problem is.
Yeah.
So their hands are tied to a certain extent as well. But I wish that there was like a door number 3 or something. You know? Like
I'd imagine there's certain vendors that are looking at Vermont, given that like half of the state towns need to reappraise, so I'd imagine some people see some business opportunity to like instantly get business if you can be an
Yeah.
appraiser here.
Well, and
Get passed through Vermont State.
the town is not gonna push to have it done because they don't, on that side of town, they don't need to have, you know, the select board, you know, don't
I think-
have
I
the
mean-
pinch that we're having.
I think we'll just continue to reach across the aisle and have that discussion. I think obviously with and if and when the super Walmart comes, I mean, there's a lot of good things happening in town to ease the municipal side of the tax burden and just work with them so we can hopefully chip away at the school tax side.
I'm pretty
'Cause
sure
there's a lot of
that's-
things on the docket.
That's 2028.
Well, that's got to get through Act 250 again too.
Yeah,
so.
if they're lucky, yeah.
But there's a lot of good things happening with revenue on the town side, so if we could just work hand in hand.
All right, next up, new business. So we've already approved Jeff as our Lisbeth proxy. The VEHI, which is the health and dental for the teachers and staff of the SU in our local district, have a annual meeting and require a proxy or a member to, for the board to vote. So
Oh, volunteer for that.
you will volunteer, not Jeff? Okay,
No, I'm gonna be there.
you're gonna be there too?
That's,
Perfect.
I mean, that's our health. That's the
Exactly.
big ticket. I mean, last year, they spent about 12 minutes going over their annual meeting, where this is a very large chunk of our budget. We should be as informed as we can and requiring a little bit more information than just, hey, here's your 17% increase. And we
Okay.
don't know what that is yet, Chris, right?
No, not yet.
We just know the private sector increase for the Green Mountain
Yes.
Healthcare Board, so that's a big part of what we're walking into.
Mhm.
I'd like to have a little bit more of a dialogue than the 12 minutes we got last year.
I'm okay with that. All in favor
Aye.
of Colin being our proxy?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. So you just need to fill this out and then take it with you to the meeting. Oh, actually, fill it out and give it back to Chris because Christine needs it to let them know and then she'll give it back to you, I think.
Yeah, actually,
Or just keep it?
Colin can just keep it and just bring it
Okay.
with him to the meeting.
Okay.
I just
You
make a
don't
note
need
of
it.
it. and then
Okay,
we'll put it on
perfect.
the- Yeah.
So
So-
just try not to lose it.
That's 50/50, but
Well, if you want to sign it
might as well
tonight,
light on
if
fire.
you want to sign it tonight,
Yes.
we could take a copy and give it to Chris so that he can give that
That's
back to
gonna be the
Christine.
safest.
Yes,
route.
the safest route.
You'll need to sign as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
My dog
All
is a
right,
proxy.
and then next up is the budget communication plan and FAQ document that Chris and Lewis so kindly put together for us. So Chris, if you want to
Sure.
talk a little bit about it?
I'll start with the budget communication plan. So as part of the, my superintendent goals as defined, it was collaboratively developed with myself and in the executive committee. One of our goals was around how the superintendent can best support boards through this budget cycle in terms of communicating just, budgets, cost drivers, just getting information out about how budgets work, how ed funds work, things along those lines. So, Lewis always provides a nice timeline just in terms of budget discussions, but what we looked at was how do we kind of meld a communication plan along with that. And so I provided a copy of that communication plan. It's in your resource folder. It also should be in your hard copy in your packet as well. But so if one of the things I did say at the SU board meeting was that my goal was really to have kind of one approach really for all of the local boards, with the understanding that there would be a need to communicate different things for different communities. So obviously Rutland Town will find themselves in a different situation than, say, Corey Valley or Wells Springs, just because of just the nature of things. And so we may have to communicate something differently. So that's something which just I will work with, and I know Lewis kind of got pulled into this too, because Lewis does a lot of the budgets, and he has some very intimate knowledge of a lot of the numbers and how things work. So he does help me with communication points as well. So that's something which I think we can collaboratively work on throughout the course of this cycle, or through March. So in October, my goal is, after tonight's meeting, would be to draft out a letter that would go out to parents, to staff, just kind of talking about the budgets, list out meetings, talk about the priority areas as defined by the school improvement plan, the continuous improvement plan, our strategic plan, but also by the board. And then, November would be really just kind of provide a more detailed look at cost drivers, but we're also looking at having information on our websites, which people can go through. And then that also links into the budget FAQs. We created a starter FAQ, just, we compiled questions that we received last year from a variety of individuals in all of our communities. We collected these from the superintendents as well, but then we categorized them just to start us off. We know that this is not all encompassing, that as board members say, hey, we'd like to add this question, we can add that to the list, and it'll be kind of an ever-growing list. And our goal is by early next week to have our budget website active, which will be a link that a community member or a staff member or board member or parent can click on and submit a question. And our goal is to have, within 48 to 72 hours, have a response into that draft, or that communication FAQ list. I'm sorry. So that's where we're at. So we're trying to help out. We're trying to support the boards this year. I know that Rutland Town did a lot at the end of the budget cycle, just trying to get the word out. But as Colin really said, we want to be more proactive and really try to get the information out, so when people go to vote in March, they can't say that they have not had the information, that we have had discussions around just situations that, like Colin said, healthcare, the cost driver, and what they may be, and explain how that works. Even just talk about how ed fund works. That's, it's not just, as people may believe, that it's just schools, school districts, and SUs dipping into this, that there are other people who dip into the ed fund as well. You have TIF districts, and Killington and Water, is dipped into the ed fund, and so there are a variety of other factors that go into play here that people need to be aware of, that are kind of in there. So whatever feedback the board has for me, and just or questions, I'm happy to answer them, or at any time.
I had two pieces on the FAQ.
Mm-hmm.
So for number 5, what happens if voters do not approve the school budget? I was wondering if we could switch it at the last part from which usually happens within a few months to say something like which usually happens within a few weeks to months.
So these are questions that'll be answers to be expanded upon. This was kind of to get this going, just trying to generate out 30. So obviously there's a link to, the AOE did a nice job of putting out that document that says what happens when a budget is passed. We'll link that document from last year. There will be other bits of information that will be linked to there. So this was just to give you an idea about where it's at. This is not like the final thing, like we're done with this. We'll have to go back go back and edit and work through these different things.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Just because I know that some of our votes were literally just a few weeks, and so I just want to make sure that people, because we had some community members that were surprised at how quickly we did it, but we had to make sure that we had time if it didn't pass to do it again. And so sometimes it does only take a few weeks in between.
Correct. And
I just
you're
want to
right.
make
I
sure
think-
that that's possible, that.
We'll provide links to like the VLC, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, when the first votes, there's that 30, 40-day window, but when we go back into a second or a third vote, that window shrinks. And so therefore, people think, oh, we still have that 30, 40-day window, and 30 and 40-day window, it basically means we can't warn it 40 days prior to the vote to warn this, or 30 days. So we have that 30 to 40-day window. It's like that sweet spot. When we go to a second, third vote, that, like I said, that shrinks. And I think that was the question last.
But even
time.
30 to 40 days is less than 2 months. So I just felt like maybe instead of months, it should say weeks or
Sure.
something
Sure.
like that.
Yep.
And then the other thing that,
And real quick, so the board will have an opportunity to edit these documents too. So you'll
I
have
thought
editing rights.
I thought that's what you were asking for tonight. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, but I was going to say is
Okay.
you'll have the opportunity. We'll open this up where you can go and edit and work on items as well. So it's not just going to a list of things and we'll go back and do that. So I think it's something.
But should the board discuss it or agree on it? Or is it any member can add it to it?
Well, I think that's something which we want to talk about as what the board wants to do. So I mean, I don't want it really being like a Wikipedia page.
No.
Where anybody has access, and so it's just.
Yeah,
but
that's what. Agreed.
Yeah.
Where is it now? Is it out? Is it on the site? Or?
We have not posted it live yet, so we're gonna go. We have Rutland Town tonight, Wells Springs tomorrow night, and Corey Valley. So our goal really would be to get it up Friday if we could.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I view it as a working document, but the way it sits right now, I like it. I'd love to have it out there.
yeah,
Just so, I mean, we've been overly transparent since we got shot down last year, and this is important things about what we control, what we don't, and I'd love for people to have that information as they head towards November,
yep,
so they can be asking people who are trying. Those are the people that can make a difference. We can only react at the board level. And we have a very small control over what we're budgeting. I'd love for the public to be able to take these questions and ask the people that want to go to Montpelier and say, hey, what's your thoughts about changing some of this stuff? Because we can't do it. And I'm okay, editing as we go, but I think it's really good right now, the way it is, and to get that information out there.
I will say that I've had two parents talk about budget already. So I spoke to a parent today asking about, we had some video cameras, and I said, this isn't a good angle, and I would love to get all new video cameras, because we had cameras that, we all know, they're cheap now. And I think Greg has told us before, he would like to outfit our school with just all new cameras. They're very, very dated, they don't work, it's very clunky, but a lot of money was put into them 10 plus years ago, and now it's just a lot cheaper. So Greg is waiting for that, but we need to budget for it. So I spoke to a few parents, new parents, and I said, and they're not registered voters, so I just spoke to them this evening, encouraging them to register to vote. And I spoke to another parent that was asking about new doors, safety, security stuff, and has spoken to Superintendent as well about the budget already. So when this is ready, I will include that in the biweekly newsletter, and we can send it out. And if there are other separate things that the board would like me personally to send out, feel free, because Pam and Sherry send a lot of stuff out, and I kind of wait for some really important things. Sometimes it's not the best news that I have to share, but I'm happy to send that out, and parents are talking about the budget already, so.
Oprah, you get a camera, you get a camera.
Tina, I made that correction already. By the
Oh,
way.
thank you. And then I had one more suggestion too. After number 30, so 30 is talking about gold towns, right? Am I correct? That's when wealthier towns send money into the general fund to help to be distributed.
Yeah.
So one question we get almost every pre-town meeting is, well, does Rutland Town send money? And so since this is an SU document, I was just thinking we could say which towns in our SU send money to more money to the ed fund than they receive.
Okay, I'll work with
Something
you
like
with
that, something related to that, because I think it's related and I think people want to know. And so if it's already on here, that helps.
Right.
I could probably give you a list of the questions we get asked every year. but it wouldn't pertain. One of them is how many kids ride the school bus, each school bus. And one is how much money do we get back from solar? And the third one is how much money do we send to Montpelier and how much money do we receive? And I think the last couple of years, we actually received a little bit more money than we sent, correct?
Yeah, so we're not considered a gold town.
No, we're not
But that
anymore.
question is asked every
Well,
year.
last
That's
year,
what
this
everybody still thinks.
That's what
that was
they
last
say.
year. This year, the budget we're in, the taxes you guys just paid, we're sending a lot more money to Montpelier this year.
So you think we are a gold?
Yeah, that's
We need $10.8 million. So if you look at the property list and CLA, we're gonna send them 20. I don't know what the tax credits look like, because we don't have access to that data, but I don't think the town folks are getting 10 million back in tax credits.
Right.
If you just do the math on the grand
Yes.
list, and
That's-
it's, with the CLA adjustment, it's like $20 million. It's like double our budget.
Wow.
well,
Well, what we will.
So that's a really good question to include.
Yes. Okay.
You know when Lewis gets that information, Chris?
It's a huge lag, right? I mean, it's-
That's
we're like
the-
we're
that's
like
the-
a year behind. I mean, by
Right,
the time
that's
we
the
get the
tough
data.
part, is that timing of it.
Lewis did message me and said he's lost connection for 5-10 minutes, so if we could just
Yeah.
come back to him, so.
And you just let me know when you want me to send this out too.
All right. Does anyone else have any comments about
is
the
good. I like
communication
that.
plan or the FAQs?
I would just, whether this is Lois or Chris or whoever, the per pupil thing that we got at the SU, could we have that?
So we are also going to create like a resource where, like there's a nice little chart diagram that Louis and I were working on that talks about basically how, property taxes work. So it just goes through like a little flow chart. We're going to try to put as much informational like documents on this website as possible. So the information that we shared about that was in the board resource folders around per pupil expenditures will be placed on there as well, so people can see that, and that's something which can be shared as well. But we're trying to get dispel a lot of the misinformation that's out there, because like I said, when you hear someone say, on average, the state spends X amount, well, that doesn't mean that every single district or SU is spending that. I mean, some are higher than that, some are lower than that. So, we'll have a lot of this information on this website, and we need to continue to clean it up to make it more user-friendly than it's been. So, because I think in the past, people have had to really go and find things and like look through it, and really we want when someone goes onto that page, if there's a wealth of information there, and then if there's something specific to say Rutland Town, they can click on the Rutland Town link, and there'll be information specific to Rutland Town or to Wells Springs, or so that is our goal. And I know that I've already spoken with Greg and Shannon about this, about getting this updated, and they're working on that on the back end. So,
I want to thank you for taking the initiative to put these together and do all that work. I know it's a lot. I do hope it's helpful and believe it will be.
well, I think it's to be honest, in looking at what happened last year and what's going to be happening in the couple of years, I think we just still have to continue to educate people on how this all works. And I think there's just a lot of people who really feel that people are spending money foolishly when that's not the case at all. That we are being financially responsible, and like I said, there are a lot of other drivers that at play here that force our hand in certain situations. That people just have to understand that it's not just like a checkbook that we write, and it's very complex, it's very nuanced, and there's a lot of gray with this. And so it's just our goal really to provide information to them as much as possible, help them better understand that. So, but something which we will be doing. It'll make our lives easier too. So.
Thank
I think
you.
in an effort for even more transparency, you delivered like the per pupil cost to us, but I'd like a per student as well. I mean, some of that, and you look at the data saying, oh, that we're behind, or we're spending more than this district. It's on a per equalized pupil basis. I mean, some people, when you dig into like how we're spending education, like some people actually want to know the raw data, like how much we're spending per kid, not what the state considers a kid. But you have 353 students at Rutland Town. What do you, not 870 equalized pupils? Like, how are you guys spending? I think that's important, just for transparency. So at least our voters can take that to Montpelier to say, here's the raw data.
When we met with Secretary Saunders last week, it was like the superintendents and board chairs. There's some really good information that was shared that's not ready for public yet.
Okay.
But as soon as they kind of clean that up a little bit, I think it kind of help have people better understand where we're at in terms of spending as opposed to other areas in the state. I think people will be kind of surprised at that where our SU, where our districts lie as opposed to others. I do know that we are trying to work with the AOE and Jill Briggs-Campbell. Jill Briggs-Campbell is the new deputy director of education, so she is the number 2 to Secretary Saunders. So on October 28th, we are trying to work a community meeting in which there would be a session in the afternoon for educators, board members, and then there'd be a session at night for all community members, and they'll be at West Rutland. So once we have that finalized, we will be sending that information out to parents.
Great.
But it's a good opportunity really to kind of engage, to hear, kind of what the next steps are, where the AOE stands with education, ed financing, what they believe some of the next steps are, some of the solutions are, but also for individuals, for community members, for parents to share their frustrations or concerns and just about where they want to see with education, where they want to see education heading in the next in the short future. So, but like I said, I know I've been working with the state on that in the back end. It's just like it's not finalized as of yet. So we have a date, but once we have the details, we'll share it out with everyone.
Thank you. Okay, Lewis is back. Lewis, would you like to,
Be done with this.
anyone have any questions for Lewis with monthly reports? Okay, so then budget priorities discussion. Did you want to lead us off, Lewis?
So last month we sort of went over the timeline was in the packet, and we sort of went over that at both the SU meeting and the local meetings. So pretty much tonight we're just going to have a discussion. It's important to hear from the board as to what they want to see and what their priorities are for this round of budgets, so that when we're meeting as administration, we can kind of have in the back of our minds what the board wants to see, so that when we present that first draft, we can make sure that we're presenting a budget that's in line with your expectations. So November board meeting, we'll present the first draft. At that time, we won't have any state data, so we'll just be looking at raw expense data from your end, which is only one piece of the calculation that we know that creates a tax rate. Some items will still be pending, mainly tuition revenue and tuition expense, and then some revenues. December, we would be looking at the second draft. At that time, we should start seeing some final expense data, such as we'll have tuition expense. We should have all our local revenues. Lately, the last few years, the state data hasn't been available for our December meeting. That hasn't started to roll in until the middle or end of December. So most likely, we'll be looking at providing that data at the January meeting, where we'll start looking at tax rates and what the impact will be on taxpayers based on the budget that we're looking to present. So, I mean, at this time, I'd really just like to open it up to the board so that you can have a discussion as to items that you would like to see in the budget and really what your expectations are.
Who would like to go first?
Not me.
Jeff?
I mean, I think we'll get I feel like our next meeting is where we've laid it out to get some real true feedback on.
Well, we're getting community feedback next time on the first draft. But
I
I think
would
he's
like-
looking for guidance to write up the first draft.
So I think as we go through as we went through last year and we go through the next 4 years, obviously when we go to save, we're going to be cutting the low-hanging fruit, which is desks, which is cameras. You get a camera. And I know we have some surplus at our level as well as the SU that we're discussing. Potentially, Lewis, maybe show us a plan where we could use that as for capital expenditures, because I know when we get into the meat of the budget, we're just going to be slashing and burning those easy things that certainly we need, and there's a surplus, so it's not going to create we're not going to hire a position that then we're not going to have the revenue for. So I think that may be a good use of some of that surplus one-off to shore some things up, or maybe put some more money in our capital budget for the buildings itself, because I know we're gonna get pushed to be as tight as we can. So I think maybe that's appropriate to use those one-offs to get some stuff that we need, because we can't continue to, and I know it's just gonna be tight, we can't continue to not get teachers' materials and take care of this place. So I know Lewis has talked at the SU level and here, so just some ideas there and how we could spend that wisely without creating a budget hole in the future.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was at this meeting that we discussed this, but I'll just go over it again. So like for your surplus, I believe it was $424,000. I don't have that directly in front of me, but it was north of 400,000. There's three main options that you have. You can the first option is do nothing with it, which means that it all goes back to the taxpayers as revenue, and so that will increase your revenue and lower your education spending. But that's great for a one-time advantage on the tax rate. However, the problem was that the following year, and if you don't have that revenue, then you're starting that budget cycle that much in the hole. Option two is you ask the taxpayers to use a portion of that or the full amount for a reserve fund. So you can ask to give 50% or whatever percentage the board decides to deposit that into a capital reserve fund, and then that money, if it's approved, that money would sit there until the board decides to use those funds. So doing that, you don't get the benefit of the increase in revenue, but you're also putting that money away for a rainy day for your building fund. Option three, which we talked about, I believe it was either this meeting or a different meeting, was put it in as a revenue, but then do a one-time expense increase to offset it, with the intent that expense would come out the following year. And so in that situation, you would have to make that expense. So let's say you knew you needed to do your paving project, or a roof project. So you would put that money in as revenue. You would increase your expense repairs budget by whatever set amount is that the board decided to, with the intent that money would come out of the budget the following year. Because this year you would have the revenue to offset it, but the following year you would not. So there's pros and cons to that. The pro is that if you're not depending on that separate article getting approved in order to be able to do your needed building repairs. The offset is that it could result in your whole budget getting voted down. So there's impacts that we would need to talk through in either scenario. But it's definitely an option that you can consider. With the SU surplus, we talked a little bit about at the October board meeting about refunding the surplus to all of the districts for the last year's surplus, giving that back this year, and then having the districts use those funds this year to do building improvements. So looking at your 5-year plan, let's say if Rutland Town got $75,000 refund, and then you would use that money this year on a necessary project on your 5-year plan.
So between the two, we're like SU surplus and Rutland Town, we're like ballpark $500,000.
No, because the SU one was being split amongst all of the districts. So your portion is a lot smaller. I could bring that up. So that would have been presented at the August meeting as to what your portion was. I can bring that. Just take me a second to bring that up.
77.
So the general fund portion was $32,000. I'm sorry. Maybe you said $500,000. So maybe you are close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was both. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was $32,000 for the general fund and $122,000 for the special ed fund. So yeah, you're about 150,000 for that, and then for your local budget, I think pretty sure it's $424,000.
Louis, could you, I know you've explained this once before, but just for somebody who's listening may not quite understand, can you just explain where that $424,000 comes from, that surplus, just so people have a good understanding that it's not just money that we just didn't spend, that there are a variety of factors around that. I think that needs to be clarified for people.
Yes, so I'm going to bring up actually the report I provided in August, which would have given the breakdown for those funds. So this is impacting all of our schools, some of the same things, but we've had a large sum of money through ESSER funds, which was federal grant money that all schools were given due to the pandemic. GRCSU received $3.6 million. And those funds have been used for many, many different items, but some of those items that we did use those federal grant funds for, in the past, we would have used local funds to fund those items. And because we were using federal funds, it was resulting in local savings, local dollars not being spent. And so just because the money was in the local budget, it was better to use those federal funds so that we would have those savings roll forward. With ESSER going away, we plan to have smaller surpluses in the future. And then one of the other big variables is our secondary tuition. So I just brought up the report that I provided in August. And so I'll just go through that briefly. So some of the big items that I want to highlight is we had $183,000 in additional revenue that was unanticipated at the time that we created the budget. $82,000 was due to tuition revenue. Those are the students that are not residents of Rutland Town that are attending Rutland Town and paying tuition. We had $36,000 in additional interest income due to higher interest rates. We had a prior year tuition refund from Stafford, $32,000. And then we had a $27,000 assessment refund from the SU. So that's $183,000 of the $424,000 surplus. On top of that, there was $168,000 in salaries and benefit savings, and those were due to there was one position that was federally funded, so we had 100% of the savings from that position hit the local budget. And then there was also unfilled positions due to staffing shortages, which also feed into those savings. So that's the bulk of it. So it's those those revenue increases plus the savings and salaries and benefits, and then there's a few smaller items. But again, I would just reiterate, with ESSER going away, we should start seeing smaller surpluses. Secondary tuition it is also an unknown. I believe we're going to be receiving a refund for last year's secondary tuition to Rutland City because their allowable amount came in less than their announced amount. Those numbers aren't final yet, but we could receive approximately $75,000 to $100,000 for that if that is stays the way it is.
Jeff, do you have any thoughts on the budget? What you'd like to see?
I kind of like the sounds of that option 3 and spend the money while we have it. You know, and make sure we have everything covered, all of the stuff that, and then the rest of the money can go to Kelly for building upgrades.
So you're saying like 250 to 300 in the revenue line, and then 250 to 300 in the expense.
Yep. Just
with a plan, right? I mean, if we're going to go with that expense line, I feel like there has to be like a certain expectation that we want done in the next year, and not
well,
like
the voters gave us that amount of money, then we should be spending that. And if we spend it on things that we've been wanting to do for years and just haven't dared, I think this is the opportunity to do that and get the stuff done, get some of the things done that need to be done, make sure we cover all of our lifetime sports things, all those types of things that, and make sure and just start from scratch the following year.
But I don't think we need to decide on amounts today. I mean, I think we need to get the full picture of what the budget's going to look like. We have a lot of big drivers in this round of budget for FY26 that are going to have significant impacts. We know health insurance. We're still waiting on an estimate on that, but right now I'm using 15%. We have 2 rounds of negotiations going on that are kind of unknowns. We have support staff, and we have that ended last year. So we're looking at 2 years worth of increases, both FY25 and FY26, that we have to sort of estimate. We have teachers negotiations, which their contract ends this year. So we're budgeting with not knowing what that's going to look like for next year. So those are drivers going into next year, which are going to have a significant impact on your expense side. So I think we need to sort of see what the full picture looks like and then kind of decide really what percentage increase that you want to present to the taxpayers for both expense and education spending. And then we can kind of decide really how much revenue we use and how much we increase the expense by for repairs.
Abby, do you have anything to add?
Hey. I hesitate on spending it all, and earmarking it for something. But I think, I think I'm with, might be with Jeff on this one. Yeah.
Better than your cap, Jeff, right?
So I agree. I like to keep it as level funded as possible, similar to what you were able to manage with the SU budget. And I also would like to try to see what we can do about keeping some of the extracurriculars that Rutland Town has, because I think, like lifetime sports, because I do think that it really adds to their school experience. It helps them develop a love for the community, and it gets them active, which is really important. I was just attending a conference this weekend for my optometry, and we were talking about how there's an epidemic of diabetes, and it's, increasing because there's just less activity among kids, and it just goes up the whole gamut from kid to adult. So I think anything we can do to get the kids moving and learning about that kind of health for themselves and their lifetime is really important. So I think using the strategic plan as a lens and just trying to keep our expenses down. I'd also like to make sure that we're considering the 5-year plan and make sure that we're starting to put that into the budget. And I love that we have some surplus from last year to work with and kind of get started. But we have a lot more on that 5-year plan, and some years are very expensive. So I would like to let the taxpayers vote on putting some more into our capital fund, just because we're going to need it eventually, and it's good to have it there. So those are my thoughts on it. Any final last words?
When do we set tuition rate?
Did you hear that question, Louis?
Yes. So typically we set our tuition rate in December.
Okay.
It's due January 15th.
Where do we get that number from?
Louis?
So I usually create it based on where we were the prior year and where the comparables, what the comparables are for other elementary and secondary schools. Since you don't have a ton of tuition students, it's not really a mathematical equation that I can compute. I mean, you look at schools that have maybe hundreds of tuition students, it's important that they are as accurate as possible. In the past, you've only had a couple. That has increased the last year or two. So it does have a larger impact last year and this year when we're looking at budget. But what I'll do is I'll look at where we are, where other schools are, and kind of come up with an estimate and present that to the board.
And Louis, you said there will be a rebate from the city at some point? Did you say that?
Based on the preliminary numbers that came out from the state, yes, we should be seeing a refund for last year's tuition.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any, is anyone private paying tuition?
Yeah, we have 11 tuition kids this year.
But they're coming from
Tuition towns.
tuition towns, right? So then no one's private paying.
I don't believe so. No one's paying out of pocket.
Hmm?
No one's
No one's
paying
paying out of pocket.
Yeah, well, I mean, my just thought on that is like, I see what we're charging and then our equalized pupil cost, but maybe there's some value in like, how much does it cost to educate a student? And tie that number to that, so we're not losing money.
We have a lot of parents that inquire to pay out of pocket. But
then they don't.
Right.
Then it's $16,000.
Yeah. But then they don't.
Yeah, we had one
Had them
inquire.
ask Louis, can I pay half? And he's like, no. This is the rate.
That's all, thank you, Louis.
All right, thank you. So, moving on, I will take a motion to approve the warrants.
So move.
Thank you, Colin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the minutes from September 10th. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 10th.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Superintendent's report.
If there are any questions, yeah, I'll just keep those down. And then two big things I already talked about were around the budget communication plan as well as the FAQs. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that we will have a meeting on October 28th. Once that is finalized, and that's with Secretary of Education, Zoe Saunders, as well as other members of the state. But once that's been finalized, I will get that information out to the board as well as the public and staff. So.
You said that was in the after. Is that like after school?
So there'll be
then,
two
or-
sessions, right? This is a preliminary, so nothing's been finalized. But what they're discussing is that there will be a session, 3:30 to 5:30, which would be for staff members. Basically, GRCSU staff will be allowed, as well as other members of the so the Southwest Vermont Superintendents Association. So. Representative Mill River, Rutland City, Slave Valley, Rutland Northeast would all be able to attend as well. So it'd really just be a large group that could come in and just ask questions, but also just debrief around accountability, around pathways, mental health and wellness. They're just different categories. Then there'll be a half-hour break, and then from 6 o'clock to about 8 o'clock, that's when the members of the public would be invited to attend, and they would do the exact same session but with a different group. So, but like I said, that's what's being discussed, and we'll just work through, like I said, the details, and once we have that, we'll send it out. So,
Is there still a policy committee meeting that night?
not on the calendar. So, if they're going to schedule, we have to look at their dates for that. So.
Do you know of anything?
I haven't heard of
Abby?
any.
Okay.
My communications meeting, I'll have to
I
cancel it.
meant her. So you have
I'll have
a
to put it
meeting
on hold
coming
again.
up?
Oh, no, I don't. No, I haven't.
Okay.
I just want to say, Chris, thank you. I expressed in a private email to you that this document and the timelines and the communication, at first I thought it was going to be very difficult to quantify, communications plan, evaluation, and what he's outlined is tremendous document for us to be working towards. I really appreciate that. I view it as, obviously we're governance, we're oversight, but me and Tim have talked, like, our biggest job is to pass the budget, and what you've laid out to help us communicate, I think is great, so I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Colin.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's malleable, so, whatever this board needs, and that's part of it is, it's just meant to support the board and their communication efforts. So.
Thank you. Principals report.
I will just say it's been a little bit of a heavy start here. We had a former student of ours that unfortunately had passed away, so we've had a couple of emotionally tough weeks to start school for both teachers, staff, and our kids here. So thank you. There's been a lot of parents that have reached out. I think it means a lot just to touch base with teachers too. So you know of any kids out there that may need some extra support, please let me know. But otherwise, it's been business as usual. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything that you'd like me to highlight on my principal's report.
I know that you have been looking for substitutes. Still are.
We still are, yeah. So I actually had Pam send a separate email because there's a few days, usually Thursdays for some reason, Thursdays and Fridays in September are always tough, and we don't have any subs available. And so we do what we do and we fill in. But when you're running a school of this size with a skeleton crew, it's not always safe. So anybody out there, it's a super fun place to work. We have amazing kids here, great staff. Even if it's one day a month, we'll take. And I did hear that board members can substitute. You just have to ask for some waiver with the state. So if any of you are interested, we'd love to have you.
Told my wife not to hang around in the mornings.
Has she told you? I've asked her a few times.
Yes, yes. You're not going to, I don't think you're going to pry her out of that, but.
I know, but retired teachers.
Oh, I know.
Oh, just come, yeah. So you don't have to have experience teaching at all, but you need to pass a background check and be able to work with children.
Important.
So yes, we are desperately looking for substitutes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Next up are contract recommendations. Are there any questions or any motions?
I think there's an error in there. It should be $2,000 because there's a 7th grade team and an 8th grade team, and I think it reads they're combined for basketball.
So Kelly
So
Treya gets
2,000?
2,000?
Correct, because there's a 7th grade team and an 8th grade team. They're separate games. So,
And what are so there's 2 teams, and so William Tyler is also going to have 2 teams.
correct. I had seen that was added late, so I had emailed Chris and Lewis and Christine before the meeting, just clarifying that. So I can follow up with Sherry. It may have been how she filled the form out.
Was there a reason that the decision was made to combine the 7 and 8 when there's such a large cohort in 8th grade already? And
That I just talked to Mike about that tonight. So he doesn't have signups yet. He hasn't done signups, so that may change.
The same for the girls.
Oh, for the
Has he done signups for the girls?
he hasn't done signups. So right now, for 8th grade girls, there were 9. And 7th grade girls, right now, it looks like there's 4 to 5. But he hasn't done signups yet.
Would it be possible to amend this to put those off until we have numbers for the 2 basketball teams?
Sure. Yeah.
If the board would be okay with that?
I thought this was going, Sherry sent this today, so typically it needs to have a couple of weeks before it goes to the board, so I assumed this would go in the November packet, and at that time, you usually ask, what are the numbers, and I could tell you, so I apologize.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if
Yeah.
we just wait.
Sure.
So I'll make a motion to approve with that amendment.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
You'll make that motion, Tim? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Vacancies are listed in your packet. Are there any questions? Last year we saw some advertisements for the coaches. Did they not need that this year?
No, usually Mike doesn't advertise if they're returning coaches.
Even if the program changes, it doesn't.
Usually if the numbers are bigger and they don't, the only time I've had Mike that combined them is when there's a small number for 1 grade. So that's what he's anticipating, but I think from what I just heard prior to the board meeting tonight, there may be larger numbers than what he thought. So I think we just need to get signups, see how many kids are signed up, and then go from there. But if they're returning coaches, he doesn't post the position again.
Makes sense. Thank you. All right, moving on. VSBA update, resolutions. So one of our goals this year from our retreat was to stay more informed and grow as board members. And so we agreed that we would take some turns and watch one of the VSBA webinars that they hold every month, and then share what we learned from the webinar at the following meeting. So Abby volunteered to take the first one, and she watched a webinar on the resolutions that we'll be voting on and approving at our conference later this month. And so Abby, what would you like to share with us?
Oh, we got lots. So, it was all about, I didn't know how they came up with resolutions, so that's interesting. It was very cool to see this. So there are there was 5 resolutions that they are putting out for voting.
Who's
The
they?
first one is
Abby, who's they?
well, so this is interesting. So it's the proposed by the resolutions board, but it's different school boards can put out resolutions that they want to be brought up to the VSBA. I did not. I hope it's okay. I did not put what school board brought this up. I do know the first one was Norwich, that area. The first one was about residential and non-residential property tax. They were calling for just a feasibility study to determine of the making of the non-residential rate the same as the homestead rate in some of these towns. What they were saying is that some of the the second home tax rate is actually lower, and they would like it to be the same as somebody who resides there full time. So they're looking at the feasibility study where the homestead rate is greater. So any of the counties or any of the towns where the non-residential rate is where the non-residential rate is lower than the homestead rate. They want a feasibility study done to see what that would do to the property taxes and all that kind of stuff. So the board recommends, the VSBA board recommends this to pass this so that there will be a feasibility study. Any questions? I hope I gave you that information correctly. It's a lot to learn. I learned a lot. All right. So the other big thing, the next one was about, actually about, like collecting data. And they want to be able to use some local data measures to actually, when they give a snapshot to the state about how the students are actually doing. They really do a top-down approach they talked about. The state tells us what data measures, student data measures that we should be using. And this school district really wants kind of a bottom-up approach. They're feeling that, you know, the state gives, some of these state testing doesn't give the best perception of their students. So they want to be local control, local districts to be able to say, here's our data, and kind of give a broader spectrum of student data. Let's see. They also talked about data collection and being reported timely. We all know that that's when it comes to, you know, data and the stuff that we get back from the VCAP testing, it kind of comes late in the year. So they really, they talked about part of that being, you know, just on how to get the AOE really to come back and give us better information quickly and timely. Okay, the next one was on AI and on the upcoming use of AI. I apologize. You can hear the little one talking. They're proposing that we look at and using, consult with the Agency of Digital Services and Division for AI to take all needed actions necessarily for responsible use of AI within the school district. Really coming up with model policies, guidelines for using AI and code of ethics. So really not only the Agency of Education coming up with these guidelines, but using other services through the Vermont agencies, such as, again, Digital Services and Division of AI. Again, I didn't know that those two had divisions, so that was interesting. And they're looking to pass that. The other big one is cell phone use. That's a huge conversation in Vermont right now. The VSBA supports legislation that would require school districts to adopt a policy concerning the use of cell phones and other personal electronic devices. They want the VSBA is looking at addressing at a minimum when devices are permitted, where are they prohibited, and exceptions for circumstances such as disability accommodations, medical need, and use for emergencies. And they would like to that resolution to be passed. So they were looking at that. Just look. Oh, this was an interesting one. I was like, what does that mean? They want new language added to the Secretary of Education. So there is a resolution out there. It's BSA 2702, if you want to read it. New language that they want to add is that the Secretary of Education must hold advanced degrees in education, public administration, or related field. They should have held a position as a teacher, professor, ed administrator, or something equivalent to that. And they wanted to add including knowledge of public education policy and practice and a familiarity of school governance and structure. So they would like the VSBA, the voting delegates to pass that, to add that language to that BSA 2702 policy that they have right now. And then there was a few changes, grammatical changes, along with the bylaw changes. So in Article 2, they want to add the title goals in there. Article 3, they want to add, right now they have supervisory unions. They want to add, along with supervisory unions, supervisory districts. They have to revise the date on the footnote, just so you know. And they want to remove on Article 7, VP and treasurer. And they want to change, and I couldn't figure out the article. She didn't say it. I couldn't see it either. The words will, they want to change it to shall. So that was the changes in the bylaws that you guys, whoever our delegate is, will be voting on. So
Thank you very much, Abby. That was very informative.
I have to tell you, it was very. I didn't realize we had some of these things, so it's kind of very interesting. So thanks for allowing me to present that to you.
I think the Homestead one got shot down last year.
Say that again, Colin.
They brought up that Homestead rate last year and shot it down at the meeting.
Who shut it down last year?
It got voted no. They tried to add that resolution last year.
Was it because
Okay.
it was late coming in? Because there was one
I
of
don't know. I
those
don't think
too.
anyone really understood, but
Yeah.
it's something that easily should. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing to. There's a lot of towns that have a residential rate higher than the non.
They also talked in there about the concern of non-residential rate is tied to the business rate in Vermont. Colin, you probably know a lot more about that. But that was one of their concerns and why they wanted to bring this forward. Especially, the other thing they were concerned about is the amount of Airbnbs that are being purchased in these small towns. I guess Norwich has a huge influx of homes being turned into Airbnbs. So
It's in a free market. Real estate's a free market, right? So in some ways, it's like you buy what you want. Like
Well, yeah,
if
but
the house is on the market, it can be purchased by anyone. It just happens to be purchased by someone that has the money and the wherewithal to.
I think that's some of the issue the state's dealing with the housing crisis and the Stows of the world that they have a residential rate that's lower than the non-residential,
Yeah.
and 75% of that town is non-residential.
so our
I
delegate,
apologize. That was my blind dog getting scared by the cat. I apologize. I'm going to put myself on mute.
I forget, Jeff, are you our delegate?
Yes,
Okay,
I would support that non-residential.
being the same as residential.
Yeah, I mean, you just look. I mean, yeah, it's wild that Thetford, their tax rate's 168 and the non-residential is 139. I mean, the residents are paying 30 cents more
For education, right.
which is the bulk of your
Right.
tax bill in most rural areas outside of the cities.
And they want the people that are living there to be educated, right? Because those are.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the tax rate part. I just mean the frustration of someone having an Airbnb. It's like,
Well,
that goes deeper than
Yeah.
than what we should be sitting here, really.
so,
I think the idea of the non-residential rate was always supposed to be higher, but it's become outdated and they haven't adjusted it. So I think they're trying to attack that. It should be higher. I mean, if you can afford a second home,
so,
more ching.
so advising Jeff on how to vote on our behalf. Do we agree with what the board recommended that Abby presented?
I'm still a little. I can't wrap my head around the cell phone thing because I feel like it's been such a snowball in the past 3 or 4 months just because of all the pressure that I don't think there's a well thought out
The
idea. yeah.
resolution isn't saying what has to happen, it just says that there has to be a policy, which,
And they, in the minimum, and I think the biggest thing is because, I think about back to our policy committee, we talked about this a lot. It's, their biggest thing is they want there just to be at least schools or SUs or school districts that are talking about when and where they can be used. And if we say no to some, are we allowing kids that maybe use it for accommodations? Like, are we putting what types of accommodations or medical needs or that kind of stuff? So they're not saying, because I have to tell you, Tim, when I heard this, I was like, oh my God, we just had like an hour and a half conversation about it in policy board meeting. And I feel like it should be up to the local control, like each school should be able to say their own. But I do see when this guy was talking that I think there should be some, like, at least a minimum parameters on what should be given to parents out there. But it's going to be an uphill battle, I have to say, with parents.
Yeah, we have such an uphill battle with everything else that, not that I don't have a say in cell phones, but it can, as we saw it at the SUL, it can quickly take over the conversation of everything. And by saying you have to have a policy, that's just going to turn into a cluster of what the policy should be and personal rights. And I think it's best served to not tackle that right now and let each school I think we're doing a fine job. I just think it could really take us away from
But I think the
getting
problem
the budget
is
passed, because people are just going to want to be, people cannot stay away from the cell phone things. And they have a study, and then another parent has a study, and then it's just like literally, I can see us talking about this for the next year.
Absolutely, but the one thing that I'm concerned about is it sounds like some legislation is going to be passed that is out of that it is out of the educational realm of things. It sounds like that now the VSBA is saying, well, if this legislation is going to pass, we need to kind of cover ourselves, and now that we're going to have a model policy to come along with it. That's how I took it, is like it's coming down from somewhere.
but usually they can make their own model policy because a law is created that says they must make one without having to have a resolution on it, right? I believe.
I personally just react to the legislation.
Yeah.
They can make a law. It can also be an unlawful law that can be challenged. It's a hard sell
Sure.
to tell a parent you can't give your kid. My kid cannot communicate with me.
I think based on our board, I think the procedures that our staff have developed for cell phone use and Apple Watches and whatnot has made a big difference for the students. I think it's working. Would you?
Yeah, I think Rutland Town School's ahead of things, because I've had how many schools reach out to us the last 2 years asking what we do. And yes, there are parents that argue, and I listen, and
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we need to focus on that either. So I agree with you. I think that would be one I would disagree with the board. Just for right now, not that I don't think that there, should be something in place, but I don't think that we need to just start a whole policy conversation. We have a lot of other worries with the budget right now, and I don't think we need that mucking it up, because things are good in our district right now.
And I think even at the SU level, the feedback was relatively positive from building to building,
Yes,
right?
agreed. So I'll entertain a motion to give Jeff some guidance on our behalf.
Do we need a motion or no?
Well, I think we need to either have consensus or a motion to let him know how to vote.
Oh, I'm not wordsmithing that one. You want to?
I'd like to see that word will stay, not shall, so if we could push back on that. I'm just kidding.
Listen, she was very,
It's just important to me.
She was very passionate about will and shall. Give it to her. She was a nice lady.
So the only one I vote no on is the cell phone thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, disagree with the board.
Yeah.
All right, so is that consensus?
That's, yeah, perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just for my education, Chris, for the negotiation of the healthcare, is that legislative law or is that the VSBA? When did they step in and take that control away from us?
Louis, did you hear the question? You might be able to answer this from around health, the healthcare and when it became a negotiated by a statewide negotiations as opposed to negotiated locally. When was that shift and how was that shift made? I think that was.
Yeah, I want to say it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. The legislators made that shift.
Okay, legislative.
So now there's a bargaining unit that works for the boards that bargains directly with the NEA for a statewide contract.
Done an exceptional job.
The part of the thing that really hurts the board side is that as part of the law, they go through binding arbitration, and the arbitrator selects one full proposal. So it's not like when we go through negotiations, you kind of do mediation, fact finding, and you can kind of pick pieces of each agreement and kind of try to settle a contract. The board has to give a proposal and the NEA gives a proposal, and they each give their best proposal, and then they select one full proposal, the arbitrator.
Nice.
And that just has not worked out in the favor of the boards the last few years.
So much for mediation.
Thank you, Louis. All right, next up is a virtual newsletter. I put this on here because we have been talking about trying to reach out to voters and get our information out, and we were discussing this a little bit at the SU board, and Eric Montbriand, who is the chair of the Wells Springs board, had told me that they had worked with Greg at central office to create a virtual email list. So I believe central office doesn't really manage or control it, but they just help set it up or something like that. So maybe it was a QR code or maybe it was some other way. And so the board has a way to send out information at a click of a button to a whole list of community members that are interested in hearing what's going on.
So what central office did was they would create like a mailing list that all those email addresses went into, and somebody just clicked send all, it went out to that group. So that's what Greg
Greg helped
Connors
out.
did, yes. And that's the only oversight that the
So he just helped create it with
correct.
their idea.
And then really it is board driven. The board does all the communication, all the material, just handles it all. So it's just on the back end, just helping set that up. So, and they use MailChimp, and the only cost was Greg had subscribed, but then but was able to kind of go back and they was able to have the free service without any cost. So that was taken care of. I know we talked about the cost.
Awesome.
That was more just an error because they didn't need all the bells and whistles, all the extra.
Do they use a QR code or?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm sure they probably did. Those things are so easy to generate. I mean, it's so, and all it does is just take you right to it. Like you said.
Because if the board is interested, we could set this up now, and then when the November circle goes out, we can put it in there, and that goes out to all the community that's on the voter list or mailing list, and then they could just click on that QR code, and we can also put a email address to send it if they don't know how to use the QR code, so that we could create a list, and then when our budget information's ready, we can send out a list. We can remind them of meetings, community meetings, things like that. And it was just an idea. I didn't know what the board thought about it. If you wanted me to look into it and try to set it up, or if it wasn't worth it.
I mean, I think it's a good path. I guess.
I don't know how we'll use it yet, but if it's not set up, we can't use it.
I mean, I'm not opposed to like setting it up and like trying to formulate that idea. I guess my only thing would be like, whatever we end up doing, we have to just be consistent with it, whether it's monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, like whatever the case may be, versus like sending one out to, you know, I just don't want it to fall out of
Yeah.
view. So
Would it be something that,
have you seen theirs? Have you looked at theirs?
I have not looked at theirs.
See what, I mean, how simple or
I know it's simple according to Eric, but I haven't looked at it. But we could even send the school newsletter to it to keep them informed of school happenings and things like that.
So I showed this, I'm on for strategic plan communication group with Greg, and I've showed him some other school districts, Barstow, just because they're very similar to our size. They have on their newsletter the board corner, like we do, with a QR code too, so we can just link that into the biweekly. I know that Pam reaches out to Tina to ask for the biweekly newsletter, any updates for PTO, any updates for the board.
I didn't know the board one was going on there,
Yeah.
but I was
that's been on
excited to
there.
see it. She asked about the PTO, but
Yeah.
I didn't know the board was going to be on until last time.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
been on for a while now.
But it's good to know it's there. But that only goes to
Just the
school-related
families,
community,
correct.
not necessarily the greater community. So would the board like me to look into that and bring it back?
I think it's a good idea.
Yes.
At the very least, we'll get
Okay.
click count.
All right, so by consensus, unanimous consensus, I will look into it. Thank you. All right. So next up there's two policies up for second read. One is the GRCSU driver's education for resident students in tuition school districts, which does affect our school district. And H5, Title I, Part A, Parent and Family Engagement, which actually does not really affect our school at this time because we're not a Title I school, but we are part of the SU, so if we do become a Title I school at some point, we would follow that policy. So I will entertain a motion to approve those second reads.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor?
Right?
Any opposed? No.
Is
Motion passes.
Is it over 60% make you Title I? Over 40?
Yeah.
Okay.
Over 40 is your school-wide approach.
Our next meeting will not be on the second Tuesday of the month. It will be on November 6th, which is the Wednesday, the day after Election Day. It will also not be held at the library. It will be held at the Town Hall in Center Rutland on Route 4 Business. So we're hoping to have community members join in and give us some feedback on the budget, that we'll have the first draft of the budget presented, and also anything they'd like to mention regarding budget or school. So please join us 6 p.m. November 6th at Rutland Town Hall. And teacher, staff, community comments. Anyone still there? No. So we'll move on. I do not believe we need an executive session tonight. So we're up to good and welfare.
I don't know. Things are pretty good, really. The kids, when I ask them how school is, it's good, more than fine, or okay, you know, which is awesome coming from those two, because they don't really give you a lot to work off of. So, and even Wes is like, "Oh, it was good. Oh, it was fine. You know, he's like tried to dial it down a little bit. So it seems like they're really enjoying themselves, and that says a lot about the hallways here. So good start for us.
That's great.
Coaching the third and fourth graders, and it's nice. I meet them here on Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, and we walk up to Northwood together to get a little exercise before the practice. But it's always refreshing to come into school and through Four Winds and other various things up in the school building. Just the upbeatness that I get from all the teachers, all the staff, all the kids. It's a really great community. Kudos, Sarah. Just like last year, it's like no one missed a beat. And the kids are happy, and all the teachers know all the kids, and you see it in their faces, and I don't spend a lot of time in other schools, so I don't know what it's like, but I feel like it's a special thing we got going here, and my kids love it, and so keep up the good work.
How's Four Winds going?
Good. We could use some upper class, parent volunteers, try to get it out there. It's a great way to get to know
Which grades?
all the way to 5. I mean, we got a lot of the same parents doing it. It'd be nice to see other parents. It's a great way, and I know it's during the school work day, but great way to get to know the kids in your kids' class, and they'll know you, and just watching them grow up and get to know the teacher a little bit better. So it's a really great program if you have the time. Even grandparents, we extend that out. I see it in the Barstow. There's extended family that come in and volunteer with their nieces, nephews, or grandkids, and they really get to know the school and the kids. So I'd take anyone who wants to do it, as long as they're allowed to come within 200 feet of a school.
Today's my youngest's 11th birthday. So happy birthday, Ani. And this past weekend, I became president of the Vermont Optometric Association. So be a little extra busy lately.
Didn't see that coming.
Oh,
Good one. No pun intended.
Oh, dad joke. Yeah, I called you. You couldn't let your daughter know that I rolled eyes for her.
I got the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Lamar and Sarah and going over my bus list of kids, which I hope they do with all the drivers. But there was, needs that I wasn't aware of and things, and it's making the bus a lot smoother, and things are going very, very well right now. And I have my appreciation to you guys for taking the time to
Thank you.
go through that with me, and then everything's going great.
Great.
The traffic in the morning, Mr. Lamar's out there, or you're out there waving people in and emptying and going. Everything seems to be going pretty well.
See what happens in the winter.
Yeah, well, that's
Have you gotten any update on the SRO position?
Yes, they said somebody is in background, and I said, what does that mean? And he said background checks. So I'm not really sure. I have no idea who, what. This summer they said they had one applicant, and I offered to be on interview committee. That was probably 2 weeks ago. So no update yet. And we did, Mr. Lamar did contact Visbet. I encouraged him to do that, just since with the preschoolers not riding the bus anymore, there's increased traffic here. It's just good for them to look and give recommendations on traffic flow. There wasn't a lot of feedback last time. And the feedback I have received from some grandparents, I won't name some of the other schools that they drop off at because it's within our district as well. But they said this is so much smoother than such and such school. I said that's all I need to know. If it's better than that, continue to be even with drop off. We're good. So, but we will revisit that because I'm a little bit nervous with the snow coming and
yeah.
stuff.
Great.
We'll figure it out.
Thanks. Abby?
Yeah, I'm super excited to come in tomorrow. Miss Norton's second grade class is doing a mock trial. I've heard all about it all week. The little guy's really, really excited about it. And just got laughing, reading a text message from Kate McDougall last night at 6:45 last night to remind Ren to do her laundry. She must have spilled something on her shirt, and she told Ren she would remind her to wash her sweatshirt because they had put Tide Stick on it. And I was like, did you ever think that your TA advisory would be to text the parent to remind their kid to do their laundry? She just goes above and beyond and helps the kids out. And she wanted to make sure that the stain came out of Ren's sweatshirt before it sat. So it was just like, I just sat here reading it again, and I was just dying. Like, she's wonderful. You know, she's invited Augie into her class to do some 3D printing because he's super, you know, excited about 3D printing. So they've been creating something together, the two of them. Who knows what's going to come out of the 3D printing, but something. But again, it just goes to show that the teachers care about every student, not even just theirs, and not even just about the academics. It's about the whole child, which is really important, you know. So thank you to Rutland Town, and making sure my kid does her laundry. Appreciate it.
All right. So we are at the end of the meeting, so at the end of the agenda, so I will call this meeting adjourned at 7:31 p.m. Good night, everyone.